Hello chess friends and welcome to Zadov's chess channel and welcome to the Altibox Norway Chess tournament in 2020. We are now already in the round 5 and today's day was a very important day as one historical moment will happen. And it happened in the game between Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Magnus Carlsen. So I'm not going to reveal you what's all about. We'll come to that part at the end of the video because I don't want to also to reveal you the result. But as I said, this game will be written in many chess history books because really weird thing happened. So let's check out now the game. Jan-Krzysztof Duda opened with the move e4. We have c6 by Magnus, d4, d5. So knight to c3. We have so far the Caruana. After d takes e4, knight to e4, and now we have knight to f6. The main line is something like bishop to f5, knight to g3. But after knight to f6, this is the so-called Tartakova variation of the Caruana, and I played this opening many times against my father. Had a really good result. I tried it out. I saw a game really played by Magnus Carlsen. I wanted to try it out and I had good results. Then afterwards my father found good strategies about this opening line and kicked my ass a couple of times, so I stopped to play it. So okay, the idea about this move knight to f6 was knight to f6, e takes f6. This is one of the rare cases where you should really take away from the center, because the normal idea would be to grab the knight with the g pawn. Now we take with the e pawn, but there is the main idea about this setup of blacks is to create a bishop and queen battery here on dark square. So bishop to d6, queen to c7, and you see now when we build this battery, first of all, we cannot be attacked by a knight on b5, so we simply rely here on our battery and we're attacking the weak h2 pawn. The other idea is simply to proceed with f5 and this pawn would be protected. Then we are trying something like knight from b to d7, knight to f6, and after the move f5 here we are trying a knight outpost on e4, and combined, if you could just imagine the position with this battery on dark square, so this is a really great setup for black to counterattack a potential kingside castling. But the cool part about Jan-Krzysztof Duda's game was that he will not, of course, castle into black's attack, and that's exactly what my father did. In the first games that we have played, my father always castled. I found really this move f5, knight to d7, knight to f6, and now knight to e4, and I really had really good result because I had perfect harmony between my mirror pieces against the castle king, but on the king side. But here the best way, I think, for white is simply to castle queen side. We'll come to that part also. It's very important. Now first c3, we're fixing our pawn on d4. We have bishop to d6, bishop to d3, castling, queen to c2. So both players will build this queen and bishop batteries on this long diagonals. We have rook to e8, and we can cover now with knight to e2. h5 played by Magnus Carlsen, immediately attacking. As I said, he wants to get use of his direction of the attack because his pieces are really aiming on the king side, so that's why he's trying as fast as he can really this attack. In the game, bishop to e3 was played. Now knight to d7. Now comes this idea. In long terms we could really try, as I said, f5, knight to f6, knight to e4. That's our main strategy, to get a knight outpost on e4. But now Jan-Krzysztof Duda simply castles out of the attack. Okay, it's still playable. Nothing went wrong here for both sides. This position has been reached many times in chess history. It's not a problem that you have made a mistake. But as I said, if you face this line from white perspective, my recommendation is, as I said, to simply get out of black's attack, because the direction of black's attack is really clear. It's simply on the king side. So now Magnus attacks the queen side because white has castled on the queen side, so that's why b5 immediately. And here Jan-Krzysztof Duda found really a great move, d5, splitting the pawns. A very important move to recognize, because we are not allowing this pawn chain to create further attacks. After the move c5, we have bishop takes b5, and now rook to b8. Here Magnus sacrifices the pawn for the initiative, and of course we have c4, fixing the bishop, staying on this diagonal, which is very important, so this knight so far cannot play. And in the game, a6 played by Magnus, we have bishop to a4, and now rook to e7. Getting out of the pin, of course, and we have knight to g3. Now we want, of course, to use this very weak square f5. That's the main target here of blacks. Knight to e5, played by Magnus. And if you try, I think, knight to f5 immediately, then I think we will simply take and double up our rooks here on the b file. I think from this point on, if you play knight to f5 immediately, black could have a comfortable game, because this knight is very good, and also you have some troubles because your c4 pawn is hanging. So this is now Magnus Carlsen preparation here. So as I said, knight to e4 here played by Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So not this move, knight to f5. You saw the tactical problems, and now we have rook to b7, b3. Fixing the pawn structure, creating really this pawn chain. It's a very, very nice setup so far of white to protect this one. And now what we want to do is play something maybe like h3 and then f4. We should never allow this knight to stay so centralized here. This knight is very annoying. The whole attack will be now by Magnus Carlsen will be built around this centralized e5 square. We have rook to b4, we have bishop to d2, and now Magnus goes all in, sacrificing the rook for the exchange. Rook takes a4. So okay, it was a risky choice, but the evaluation is equal here. So it was a correct rook sacrifice. So Magnus played so far a very, very aggressive game. B takes a4, great tactical game. And now we have bishop to f5. You see now the problems in the game. Rook from d to e1 was played, and now h4. This is now the critical moment of the game, as this was now a huge, huge blunder here by Magnus Carlsen. It doesn't seem so, because the idea is clear. We want to play h3. That's the main idea, to split the pawn structure, or at least weaken the pawn structure. So if we play g takes h3, then the pawn structure is weakened. If you pass through with the move g3, then also we still have a weakened pawn structure, and we can use this weak square f3 to really create dangerous attacks. And then afterwards we will play something like bishop to e5, and now you see the tactical problems on the b file. So, but h4 is a mistake here, because we can simply play the move h3 like Jan-Krzysztof Duda did. But a better idea instead of this h4 move is simply to play knight to g4. We want to attack first of all this h2 weakness. And now if you try something like rook to f1, so the h2 weakness, there's also this f2 weakness. We are trying, of course, bishop takes e4 followed with knight to f2. Bishop to e5 is the serious threat that I think Magnus Carlsen missed here. And now after h3 we can go rook to b2. The queen has to stay on this diagonal in order to protect the knight. This is really the suggested line by the top engine. Now we can still play this move knight to h2, and after something like bishop to c3, staying on this diagonal is also an option. So although there are now many tactical lines, I don't want to really show you now what happens if that happens, but I still think that you can play from this point on with black pieces. Black has really a great attack here, but in the game, as I said, h4. The first really blunder here by Magnus Carlsen, and h3 was played by Jan-Krzysztof Duda, simply creating this blockade. And we have now knight to g6, rook to e3. Very important move now for by Jan-Krzysztof Duda to really close, to really lock the potential threats here on the b file. We want to play rook to b3 and simply get rid of the rook. So bishop knight to f4, we have g4, a very nice move here by Duda. If you try h takes g3, then we can recapture with the rook, and we have still a great attack also on the g file. So bishop to g6, king to d1. Very brave idea here by Jan-Krzysztof Duda to escape with the king as that. And we have now f5, attacking the knight. We have knight takes d6, and here from this point on, again, white has, I think, a comfortable game. We get rid of really this annoying bishop. This is a really great bishop, because the main idea of Magnus in the beginning, you saw, was to play the bishop on e5 and creating this dangerous threat here on b2. Now we got rid of the bishop, and here from this point on, Jan-Krzysztof Duda has really a comfortable game. So after queen to d6, if we also see the pawn structure in the center, we have now also the supported pass pawn. If this game goes into an endgame, even if, for instance, black manages to get somehow the exchange back, then of course with this pawn structure, white has also a comfortable game. So the only way to lose this one from white's perspective is simply to create a huge blunder. And let's see now what happened in the continuation. So here g takes f5, you see Jan-Krzysztof Duda grabs another pawn. We have bishop to h5 attacking the king, and now f3, simply locking now the light squares. Okay, there are still some tactical threats, still this f3 is weak. Still, we can also maybe try some dark square attacks here, maybe to also queen to a1, queen to f6, with the clear idea to play this very annoying check. And we have now bishop to c3. So here from this point on, really the game is going downwards for Magnus Carlsen. I think white has regrouped, white has found really a good defensive setup here. Now you cannot only just play with these pieces, you don't have the support of the pawn. Sometimes when you have such a great activity, this rook is very active, the queen is very active, this knight is very active, the bishop is perfectly fine, but you need at least just sort of a pawn breakthrough that helps out the attack of the minor pieces, that helps out the attack of the queen, of the rook. Now bishop to c3, queen to g5, and now queen to e4. Here Jan-Krzysztof Duda really regrouped. We have queen to g2, but again rook to e1. Okay, queen takes a2, but now queen to c2, again forcing a trades of queens. Queen takes c4, but now rook to e8, really forcing it again, a trades of rooks. We have now, after queen to d5, queen to d2, again forcing further simplification in the game. Bishop takes f3. It's again not a problem because we'll still have so many pieces that can really defend us. We have queen to f5, knight to d3 is again not a problem. We can again play something like king to c2. It's I think defendable, even if we have to lose for instance the rook, but it's not a problem. We're still continuing the game with the whole rook up. So queen to f5, we have rook to e3, again the same idea, preventing this very annoying knight to d3 move. Knight to e2, king to b2. Again, you see Magnus Carlsen doesn't have any more checks. Knight takes c3, queen takes c3, and now queen to f4. The evaluation is here plus 14 for white, so I'm not seeing good ways how black should play this on. So here, as I said, if only, but only Jan-Krzysztof Duda makes a huge blunder, white can make something happen. Queen to d3, very important move. F5, rook to f8. We want to double up, of course, on the 8th rank and also create really this annoying checks. Here queen to b4, played by Magnus, again a check, but not a problem. We can still hide with our king to c1. No more checks are possible. Bishop to e4, but now of course queen to b3, again forcing a trade of pieces. Queen to c3, queen to d6, and now rook to f7, queen to g6, rook to d7. We want of course to cover also the first rank. White needs to be patient here. You don't want to really risk some tactics. Just keep the calm game, support your king. Then if the king is not endangered, maybe even just give up the rook for the bishop, and then it's of course a much more simplified game, and white is winning. So queen to g1, we have king to b2, c4, and now comes this idea that I said, rook takes e4, f takes e4, and now rook to d4. We have queen to f2, we have queen to d2, we have c3, again another problem. Here Magnus tries really this desperate checks, but now rook to e4, queen to g3, queen to d4. The idea is clear. We want also to play now rook to g4, attacking the weak g7. Now queen to g2. You cannot do perpetuals. The king is going towards the center. We have now queen to f5 and now queen to f5, but now we can grab another pawn here. As I said, you can play just a couple more checks, but perpetual checks are not possible. G5 here, a5, h3, rook to e7, attacking the king, and now queen to g7, king to h5, queen to h7, forcing real trades of queens. But now after rook to e4, here in this position, Magnus Carlsen resigned. So rook queen to f4 is of course a possibility, but we could simply take, and we have still this pass pawn. So it was a losing game by the world champion. Incredible stuff. And now we come to the historical part. It was the 125th game. So it was now the 126th game. In 125 games, Magnus Carlsen didn't lose in classical time chess. So the last game that Magnus Carlsen has lost was on the 31st of July of 2018 against Shakhriyar Mamedjadov in a tournament in Biel. So he has played now many great games, and he hasn't lost really in this classical time format for 125 games. Incredible non-losing streak by Magnus Carlsen. We knew that it will happen one day, but I really didn't expect that it would happen so early. I really, at least not in this game. Please, I'm not saying, I really don't want to disrespect Jan-Krzysztof Duda, but how Magnus Carlsen played now this tournament, I really didn't expect that he would lose the game against Duda. I expected maybe he would lose against Caruana or maybe Alireza. But okay, congratulations really for Jan-Krzysztof Duda. He played here really an outstanding game. He defended all of this. As I said, I really didn't want to respect it, but I wasn't simply expecting it. The Jan deserves his win. He played really a great game. Now Magnus Carlsen will stay still in the history as the player who has not lost a game for the longest time. So as I said, 125 games. It was now over, and this game will be, as I said, written in chess books and in chess history. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. We'll cover also some more games from this round 5. Many great games have been also played. Alireza Firouzja against Aryan Tari, and also Fabiano Caruana against Levon Aronian. These 2 games had also great impact on the continuation of the tournament. If you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my coverage so far. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games by humans in chess history and also the best chess game by computers, check out my links here, also of that series on my YouTube chess channel. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of course. Sorry.